All right, so Manny Machado, he is talking in the Padres clubhouse before this Padres Mariners series, and he had some comments about the All-Star game, and he was happy how Jerickson Profar and Robert Suarez and Jackson Merrill and Luis Ariz and Tatis, all of these Padres made the All-Star game, but he mentioned how he's not a big fan of the awards given out, the voting process, the All-Star game, and the politics, and so I want to play courtesy here of 97.3 The Fan. I want to play his comments and then have some thoughts on it.
I'm not a big fan of all these what do you call them? These awards, these Silver Sluggers and Gold Gloves and All Stars, and I think that's all put, whoever they want to put in there. So, but if he would have got snubbed, I mean, that's not right. I mean, he's been one of the best center fielders in the game right now, or if not the best overall. And to be doing it as a 21-year-old at a new position, I mean, it's incredible what he's been doing defensively and offensively, and what he brings to this team. So,
before I let Manny keep going, when he talks about how sometimes the voters just give awards to who they want, they put people in who they want. Yeah, I mean, I'm totally with him. There's some times where you see Nolan Arenado, for example. And I know we're biased because we're Padres fans, but we see Nolan Arenado win a bunch of Gold Gloves. And it's like, should Manny have won one of those when he was with the Padres? And he's going to get into the All-Star game voting here. And he mentioned someone that I agree with about him not being in, at least as of now.
I'm glad he did, and we don't really got to talk about that. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of these awards.
Not a fan of politics, all that stuff.
Yeah, it's politics. Too much politics. Yeah, politics get into this and takes away from the game. I mean, I think it's there's unfair. There's a lot of guys around the league right now that are not in it, and it's. I mean, look at Christian Walker. He's putting up 270 with 22 and 70. I mean, that's an all-star in my book, and he's not going. So I mean, it's just amongst other names around the league that are doing the same thing.
Yeah. So he talks about Christian Walker there, and I'll play the rest of it here in a second. That is one for sure that I'm like, yeah, he should be an all-star. Why is Christian Walker not an all-star, but Pete Alonso is? This is where I totally agree with Manny about the all-star voting. And do things need to change? I don't know what MLB would do to change this, but I feel like it could be influenced. I feel like they were influenced this year with Pete Alonso getting in. And he gets in, I feel like, because he says, I'm only doing the home run derby if I'm going to be an all-star. And you look at the guys in the home run derby, I get like Bobby Witt Jr., it's a name. There's Gunnar Henderson, Jose Ramirez, but it's not Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, Giancarlo Stanton, Bryce Harper, Fernando, guys like that. And so they need help in the home run derby department. And so you have Pete Alonso, obviously, who I think a lot of people think of him as like, yeah, he's the home run derby guy. And it's smart because he's like, hey, if I can get an all-star out of this, I'm going to be a free agent at the end of the year. He's a Boris guy, so that feels like it's a Boris move there, saying, yeah, it would be cool to play in the home run derby if I'm elected to the All-Star game. Like, that is an issue. You don't have to be Giancarlo Stanton in San Diego. I was there. He won the home run derby. He was not an all-star that year. He just went to the home run derby. You can go to the derby and not be an all-star. So I agree with Manny about that sort of stuff. They've got to be able to fix that. The guys that deserve it should get it. Now, I think the good thing is that there's a bunch of replacements that usually happen. There are injuries. For example, Fernando, he was named a starter, but he's hurt, so someone's going to replace him. Maybe that's Brandon Nimmo who starts the game. We'll see. But there's going to be replacements, so hopefully Christian Walker can get in somehow with an injury, because Mookie's out, Fernando's out. There are other guys that will be out, so hopefully he can get in that way. And I'm not a Diamondbacks fan, obviously. I just want the guys that deserve to be an all-star to be able to get that honor. So here's Manny.
It's yeah. I mean, MLB wants to change things. I think that's one that they got to look at. You know, not every team should be in it if that's what it is. You know, but yeah, it's there's an adjustment to be made there for sure.
Sorry, would you still leave it to fan voting, or would you leave it to like?
Fan voting is fine. Fans want to see who they want to see out there. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think that's a great way to push the game. You know, but I think you know, overall, you gotta look around the league and see what guys are doing and who are not, or add another All-Star at the second half. You know, I mean, there's different ways to do it, but there's definitely adjustments to be made for sure.
Okay, the whole second half thing, add an all-star in the second half. What does he talk? I don't know what he's talking about there. Like, does he mean name an all-star in the second half of the season? Like when you have the full year context instead of the half year? But he's not going to go to the All-Star game because the All-Star game is in July. So I don't know about that, but he makes a good point about all of the teams having to be represented. Now, the Oakland A's this year, okay, Mason Miller All-Star, like electric, that's understandable. But there's some years where, and I think the Padres have been on this as well in past years, where do the teams that aren't trying to win, do they need to have an All-Star? Do they deserve to have an All-Star? Again, if you're the Angels and you have Mike Trout or Shohei Ohtani, when Ohtani was with the Angels, yeah, they're one of the best players in the league. They're one of the faces of the league. They're one of the stars of the league, of course, yeah. But there are teams like the Orioles or I don't know, name another team, the Royals or the Phillies. Obviously, fan bases are going to want more of their guys, regardless of how many guys that they have. They're going to want their guys to get in. But there's some where it's like, does that team deserve a representative if that team is not trying to win? Do they deserve it? Now, I get it. There's also the argument of, well, it's tradition and every fan base wants to see their guy in it. But maybe then what they should do is make the rosters bigger. Now, I know that that means that there's more money being spent because of hotels and the families and an extra locker in the clubhouse, and there's a lot that goes into it. But if there's someone that is left off that deserves to make it but doesn't make it because a bad team has to have someone in, that's where, people get frustrated, right? You look at the NBA, and I know the All-Star game is like unwatchable there because there's like no defense being played for the most part. But it's not like there's a requirement, I don't think. Could be wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong. But they don't need every team to have a representative in the All-Star game. It's the best players. And so you look at those rosters and it's like, oh yeah, stars, 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 stars. Where at Major League Baseball All-Star game, you go down the rosters and the casual fan, do they know who David Fry is of the Cleveland Guardians? And he makes it. Now, I believe he deserves it based on his numbers this year. And I actually just paused here real quick to look up David Fry's numbers. And yeah, he does deserve it. So I shouldn't say that name. He has a 157 OPS plus with Cleveland, 300 average, 1.7 Baseball Reference WAR. His OPS is over 900. Like, he deserves it. But you look at some, like in the American League, for example, there's Clay Holmes with the Yankees. Does he deserve to be in the All-Star game? He's on the Yankees, and he's, I think, their closer, but does he deserve to be in the All-Star game? And then there's others, like I mentioned, Pete Alonso, someone like Ryan McMahon with the Rockies, but the Rockies need to have an All-Star. So, yeah, some of these things can change, but some of the awards, like the Silver Slugger, Gold Glove, where I believe it's the writers, some of the writers vote on it. I mean, there's biases in writers. I feel like it's gotten a little bit better, but I mean, that's just how it is. And so I don't really have, a bunch of ways that MLB can fix that. For me, it's more the All-Star game. But yeah, Manny, interesting comments, some stuff that I agree with. But what are your thoughts? I'd like to know your thoughts there in the comments.